LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and I'm sure I'm forgetting another platform that I'm streaming on. My name is Frank Lavinia, and today with me I have the distinct pleasure of having Jonathan Wood, or Jon Wood, on the show. He's a prominent YouTuber, I would say. Doing pretty well on the platform, actually. And you talk mostly about ML.net. So thanks for coming on to the show. And here's a link to his YouTube channel. You can always just do a search for his name on Frank's World, or you can just go to youtube.com/C/Jon Wood. Thanks, John, for stopping by. How's it going?
It's going good, man. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem, no problem. You know, for folks that do watch stream, you are a frequent commenter, so there's going to be one less commenter out there. But I appreciate you hopping on and kind of talking about MLNet.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. Hopefully, introduce some people to it.
Cool, cool. So who's MLNet like really built for? Like, who's the target audience? Is it data scientists? Is it .NET developers? Who's it really built for?
It's primarily for .NET developers, since they're already familiar with the platform and all that. And so it's made for them if they want to include a machine learning model like within their web APIs or desktop apps or anything like that.
Interesting. So they could like put it write it in .NET and do the training and stuff like that. So you also have a really cool shirt. This is F#.
Yeah.
I love it. Where's a good place to start with MLNet, and who should start with MLNet? How about that? If somebody's comfortable in Python, are they? Would there be just like a little bit of curiosity there?
Yeah, there is. Actually, anybody can really start with ML.NET, along with the C# main API. They also have CLI, command line interface, but they also have kind of a GUI to help you train your models called Model Builder, which as Visual Studio 2019, it's pretty much comes into Visual Studio, so you pretty much already have it.
Oh, very cool, very cool. And Bill Ryan writes F# rules. I didn't know Bill was into F#. That's good to know. Thanks for watching, Bill. So I have to make a confession. Aside from your videos, I have done nothing with MLNet. I've been so heads down in Python and kind of the other stuff, and it's definitely one of the things that I definitely want to explore and kind of know more about. And so you mentioned that there's a GUI, and you mentioned that there's because yesterday's feed I was talking with Priya Ravindran. Sorry, Priya, I may have mispronounced your name. What's the we'll get into F# kind of in a little bit and on what that means, but what exactly? How long has MLNet been around? I know it's been around for a while, a couple of years at least. And what made you get into it? Because that's kind of the thing that makes me wonder. Because I know you and I. So for those of you who don't know, John and I used to work together at Wintellect, and we did a lot of kind of data sciencey type stuff and a lot of courseware for Microsoft, actually. And at the time, we were both heavy in the Python space and maybe just a little bit of R. So I just wondered what made you interested in MLNet?
Yep. So it pretty much came open source at Build 2018, and I believe I was watching the keynote when it came out. So that's kind of how I heard about it. And it was really early. I think it was released as version 0.1. So I started playing around with it. I thought it was cool, and I was like, this is early on. I should probably stick with this and kind of, learn how to use it and all that. So I did. A bit of the history of it, though, it was been in use internally in Microsoft. I think they built it around 2010 or 2012. I think.
Okay.
It used to power. It came from Microsoft Research, and it's been used to power a few things in there, and it's still being used at Microsoft on Power BI. I think Windows Defender, so they're kind of using it themselves as well.
So it's a properly dog fooded product
Hmm.
then in
Yep.
that sense. Um, Interesting. And it's currently at version 1.6.
Yep.
Okay. So it's definitely seems like it's a code base that's being maintained, it's being
Hmm.
actively used, that sort of thing.
Yep.
What what programs can you write it in? I mean, if it's CLR based, common language
Hmm.
runtime based, which for the non.NET nerds here is basically kind of like Java bytecode but different. And so, what is the? I mean, you have an F sharp cert.
Hmm.
Say that 10 times fast. So what can a lot of your code samples are in C sharp, but I mean, I
Hmm.
guess supposedly you could do this in VBNet, you could do this in F sharp and etc. What do you find kind of out in the wild in terms of what language people tend to prefer on this?
And mostly it's still C sharp.
Mhm.
Uh, I think there are a few people who enjoy the F sharp side of things. Um, there are some samples in F sharp, although since it's mainly geared, of course, toward C sharp developers, it's not what's the word? Um,
The samples in the non-primary language tend to lag. I
yeah.
think that's what you could do it. What always used to amuse me when I did a lot of .NET programming was going through a decompiler, and was it Salamander Soft was one of them, and there were a couple other ones, Reflector,
Yeah.
but you could change the output language, so you can
Oh.
so one of the things that one consulting gig I had early on in the day was they wanted to convert a bunch of VB code to C sharp. And one of the shortcuts that I would take was I would take the DLLs and basically run them through a decompiler and then kind of emit the C sharp version of the code. And it wasn't perfect, but
Mhm.
it definitely saved a lot of awkward kind of coding moments. But you had to kind of, if it was a private variable, you had to like muck around with like renaming it, kind of reverse engineering. I found it more technically challenging and more entertaining that way. And one time, I actually lost a bunch of source code because this was I didn't check it in. That was all on me, but I was able to run run it through a decompiler and kind of get the bulk of the logic and kind of fix it.
There you
So never made that mistake again. That's for sure. Um, um, so Bill writes that he is a full-on Kool-Aid drinker for functional programming. Before we go too deep into the rabbit hole that is MLNet, because I suspect that's a pretty good rabbit hole. What is functional programming exactly, and who would use it, and why would people use it? Because F Sharp's been around a
go. Hmm.
while.
Yeah.
Like I remember we were in the virtual green room. We were talking about kids because you have a youngin, and my oldest was your kid's age. We're not even born actually when I first heard about
Yeah.
F Sharp and things like that. So what is F Sharp? Who's it meant for? And what? How would you define functional programming?
Hmm. Well, I'm not by all means an expert at all. I mainly just dabble in it. But from my understanding, functional programming is one where they have these higher order functions. So it's similar, kind of, JavaScript and TypeScript is kind of getting into this more, where you have like array.map or um, array.filter and all that, where you, you can just use those with your objects and all that. And then also your variables are immutable, so you can't change them. You'd have to create a new variable from that. And so that kind of helps reduce some issues with or reduce some bugs in your code. Um, but before I forget, actually, I think tomorrow is a .NET Conf, and it's
Oh, there is.
focused all on F sharp.
Oh, very cool. Is that
Yep,
on Channel 9 or is it on what the Learn TV or something, whatever?
I believe so. And one of the more interesting sessions that I plan on watching is Don Sam, who is pretty much the creator of F Sharp, is teaching Guido who is the creator of Python. He's teaching him
Oh,
F
no
sharp.
way.
Yeah.
Oh, no way. All right, I definitely have to watch that. That'll be interesting to see. And the whole functional, because this was kind of a bone of contention, at least among nerds like us, was when Anders Heilsberg did a lot of work around Lambda functions and gosh, what's it called now? Link.
Yep.
It's very function. He in subsequent kind of presentations, he referred to C# as a functional language, and that he only did that for a couple of weeks before he said it has aspects. He then changed the wording to it has aspects of functional programming.
Yeah.
So for folks that are using lambdas and things like that, functional programming, you're probably familiar with it, right? In that sense, but I mean, a full-on functional language and the whole immutable as variables that kind of hurts my head a little bit, because it's not really a variable in the sense that all variables are constants, or I suppose you could say.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like I remember attending a .NET. It was a Rockville Maryland user group, and I don't even think we lived in Maryland at the time, so this is going back. There was a session by, and I'm blanking on the guy's name, but he used to work at MCS, and he did a lot of kind of cutting edge stuff. MCS being Microsoft Consulting Services. And that's for folks that don't know what the acronym is. But he did this whole thing where he did a talk on functional programming and F#, and there was it Haskell is the other popular functional language?
Yeah, that's one that'll really mess with your mind.
Right. And I just remember like watching it, and I understood it to a point, and I can actually feel the moment. I described it as my brain kind of went blue screen. Like it was just like, I think I get it, and then pop, like it just, my brain stopped working. So, but functional programming, as I understand it, has been around in one form or the other, and apparently, and I don't know if this is hearsay or not, but it's really popular with quants on Wall Street, or quantitative analysis folks. So why them? Like why did they fall in love with F# and kind of functional programming?
I think, I'm not real sure, but I think part of it is just, I've heard a lot of people, when they make their programs in F#, it's just you get less bugs out of it.
Right.
And you know, a lot of the quants and all that, they want a lot of performance in their code. I'm not real sure if F# gets that, because it's CLR based, like you said.
Right.
But
but CLR based, once it's compiled, though, I mean, the performance is I mean, people will fight you to the death on this, but I mean, it's it's reasonably good. I mean, the compute is not, unless you're doing something very compute intensive, compute's not really a barrier, I think. I'm sure I get a lot of hate mail and hate comments on that statement, but I was just always fascinated by it. It's like one of those things where, like, it seems like an interesting space, and definitely one I'm keeping an eye on, kind of. But do you think functional programming will go mainstream, at least in that sense, like something like Haskell or F#, or it's going to be mainstream in kind of your examples of TypeScript and JavaScript that picked up functional aspects? C# certainly has. Do you think that's the route to mainstream functional programming, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's kind of where it's going to be, where people will pick up those functional aspects within C# or TypeScript even. Unfortunately, not a lot of people have been picking up F# as far as I've seen. I know the community has grown more than what I remember when I first started, so that's good. So
they have cool swag, like T-shirts like that.
Yeah. Hopefully, it'll keep growing, and maybe it just might take this one open source project to kind of bring it to the top.
Right. Right. Interesting. So for folks that used to watching my live streams and my podcast, I tend to meander. So that was a pretty interesting meandering there around functional programming. So back to the topic at hand in terms of MLNet. Um, uh, what and you mentioned that some Microsoft products use it, Power BI and Defender, I think was the other one.
Yep.
What how do you function? How do you use MLNet? Is it just like kind of just like you would use Python, like hey, import this library and define my neural network layers and things like that? Is there a kind of a one-to-one mapping? Just it's in C#?
Almost. So it's more like scikit-learn. So you get a NuGet package, and you put the using statement in, and then you use it. You can use MLNet to load in your data, and there's different ways to do that. And then you can build your pipelines from that, and then do your training, and then save your model. And you can also use it to load the model and do predictions on it.
Interesting. What format does it save in? Is it Onyx or Pickle or something else entirely?
It's a .NET. It's a .zip file.
Okay.
But you can save the pipelines as Onyx. Most of them are Onyx exportable.
Interesting. Now, this is definitely something I totally want to explore. I've been kind of geeking out on quantum, and speaking of your brain blue screening, like quantum has definitely hurt your head. And but I may take a step back from quantum and check out functional programming and possibly MLNet. But so what about things like, one of the arguments I've heard against MLNet is what about things like TensorFlow? So in that example, you can't use TensorFlow with this, at least directly. I mean, you could do a whole REST kind of thing, but is there an equivalent to TensorFlow, or?
In the sense of building neural networks from scratch, not really. That is something that is on the roadmap. But if you have a TensorFlow model, you can either use that model directly, and I have a couple of transforms where you can load in the TensorFlow model and score it, or you can save that TensorFlow model as Onyx and then load it as an Onyx model in ML.NET.
Okay. So there is some incompatibility, but it's probably not going to do that. Have you seen uptake in the industry, like kind of like with F#? It tends to be popular with quants. Is MLNet popular with like a particular group or niche?
I haven't noticed. I have to find the link, but there is on the Microsoft site about ML.NET, there's like some customer testimonials.
Right.
And so I haven't really gone through and see if there's any patterns to it.
Interesting. I definitely I'm curious. I mean, that's the data science, and I was like, hey, what are the patterns here? Because no, I mean, like even when I was at Microsoft, it never came up in the wild from customers. Everybody's gaga over Python. If you have an old data science or an established data science team, that they used R. So I'm just curious, like, and I do know that Microsoft has had some libraries internally that are proprietary, but I think it's cool that they released this, because I think that there's definitely a market here. What are your, particularly when you see, I think it's SparkNet, where they basically port kind of C# to run on the Spark runtime. I think that's a cool idea.
Oh yeah.
Because, people love C#. I love C#. Like in my head, like I think in kind of this weird hybrid of Python and C#. I was trying to comment something out, and I used the pound sign, and I was like, wait, why does that not work? Oh yeah. Because it makes sense that my head is kind of, well, a lot of people say my head's confused anyway, but basically, the entire content automation system that I have for Frank's World and stuff like that is built in top of C# and Power Apps.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of, I haven't moved it over to Python just because time, but interesting. So what sorts of things can you do with MLNet? I mean, it sounds like you do just about anything you can do. Because there's nothing magical about Python, folks, that makes it. You can only do neural networks in that. Like, you can write neural networks in just about anything.
Pretty much any classical machine learning problem you can do in ML.NET. It has great support for regression, classification, clustering, recommendation. There's some ranking in there. And the model builder and CLI, you can do image classification and object detection. Well, and model builder, you can do object detection.
Interesting. And model builder you said, is that different than the Power Apps model builder, or is that something that's in Visual Studio?
That's the one in Visual Studio, the GUI for it.
Okay. Interesting. I haven't played around with that. One of the things I do miss about working for Microsoft is I don't have my Visual Studio Enterprise. Is it in Visual Studio kind of Community or no?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, cool. Because I realized that the other day I got a new laptop and I was like, oh, crap. I can't do that. Which I guess I could buy it, but when you're in the mothership, it's you have certain things you miss. But interesting. So what is there a connection to, say, I mentioned Databricks and things like that. Is there a connection to, can you use MLNet with Databricks, or that not directly? And it's not, I'm looking at your YouTube playlist.
Not directly. There was a Python package where it kind of runs ML.NET, like a bit of a wrapper around it, but that's been deprecated now. So, I mean, you can always build an Onyx model in ML.NET, and you probably use that in Databricks.
That makes sense. Let's see. Is there an official website for it? I'm just going to see if I can pull that up.
ML.NET?
And I imagine. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, you should be able to just search for it, and should be one of the top ones.
There we go. I'll share my screen. There you go. So this is the official website?
Yep.
Interesting. So this it's multi-platform, so it's kind of the new wave of .NET, where it's .NET Core, I presume.
Yep.
Interesting. Extended with TensorFlow. Interesting. So this is what it would look like. You get a new context. And look at that. There's an F# version of it too, on the sample code. I forgot to ask if you had any demos or anything like that, but if you did, that'd be cool. But if you don't, that's cool too. We can always have you back on another live stream, assuming I haven't horrified you. And but interesting. So this is interesting. So basically, sample sentiment, train your model. Interesting. Now, if I did want to do the training on this, I assume it runs locally, so it's not like it. Can you push this compute and this training off to like something like Azure ML, or?
Not really. And model builder for object detection that only uses Azure ML.
Okay.
But I think that's one thing they're looking at integrating with that.
Interesting. Pre-trained model. I think I know what I'm doing tonight. That's cool. So they have a lot of stuff in GitHub, actually. Interesting. where would you recommend folks go to kind of learn more about this? Your YouTube channel, of course. um, is there a learn path through learn.microsoft.com?
Not yet.
Oh, there isn't. Okay.
Um, Probably the samples might be the best.
Okay, like the samples.
Yeah, and there's some tutorials on the .NET Docs.
Interesting. And somebody told me that there's a really good course on LinkedIn Learning.
I've heard that too.
It's okay if you want to plug your course. So Jonathan actually has a course on LinkedIn Learning on MLNet. So, which is pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, it's kind of a getting started course. Hopefully, I'll start the other ones soon. This one pretty much goes over, the model builder, or introduces ML.NET, who it's for, and what it is, and all that. Then goes over model builder, CLI, and then the auto ML API.
Interesting. What was the other? CLI. CLI. I was wondering what that acronym was. Interesting. So how do people use this? Like, I mean, is it just do people use the CLI as a for MLNet to kind of train models quickly, or is it just another way to interact with the platform?
Yeah, you can use it as something like a quick POC of something if you already have the data set and all that. Um, I've heard a lot of using it like in uh, pipelines, GitHub Actions or something like that. You can use it to automatically train. If you check in new data, you can just have it retrain. And actually, let's see, there's kind of, so model builder is Visual Studio only. Somebody in the community made a VS Code extension, and that uses the CLI.
Really? So it sounds like the community around this is pretty active, because that you've in your videos you mentioned that a lot. Like, and I do see that there are plenty of samples here in terms of F# and stuff like that. So interesting. And there's an auto ML.
Mm-hmm.
Is this what you were talking about the other day? Is this in preview, the auto ML aspect?
They've updated. Well, the API has been out for a while, but they've updated how the auto ML implementation and model builder uses a couple of different newer things that came out of Microsoft research.
Interesting. But you're right, though. The C# samples are way more. There's a lot more of them. But I guess there's the opportunity, right? If you want.
Yeah.
No, this is really cool. I think it's a fascinating framework, and I think that movie recommender. There's a lot more samples here on the GitHub page than there are on the homepage of the actual product. Oh, here we go. So this is in preview, like you said. Interesting. I like it. I think it's a cool idea. I think it's a great way for folks that they can leverage their C# kind of background. I've done C#.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do the math on that because I'm going to feel really old. But for a while I've done C#, and even though I kind of now thinking kind of half Python, half C#, it'd be nice to bring some of those skills to bear, in real world projects. But it's an interesting platform. I think it's really cool, actually, and I enjoy your videos because they're fun to watch, and they're very succinct in kind of what's possible and explaining what's going on. So kudos for you, man.
Yeah, I've been slacking on YouTube a little bit, so I need to get back on it.
Cool. I may reach out to you for some tips, because your channel growth is way better than mine. But I think, I yeah, it was. But actually, since I've been doing live streams, the channel's actually kind of revived, because I do.
Okay.
I mean, I don't target YouTube. I mean, I target LinkedIn. Copy. It's a stream. Copy. Sorry, YouTube algorithm. But so what else? What else should folks know about MLNet? Like, if what would you say to someone who's a Python kind of snob and they kind of snub their nose at it? What would you say to them?
Oh man. Well, one of the things I think it's on the that homepage there, the performance of ML.NET. They actually have a peer-reviewed paper out. I think it's peer-reviewed, but it's on
Mhm.
archive. And in it, it goes over running the same, building the same models within ML.NET, scikit-learn, I think H2O, and they use
Interesting.
different three or so different data sets, and the performance, both on the training time and the accuracy, turn out to be better in ML.NET.
Interesting. Interesting. And according to this, it's not just in Power BI and Defender, but it's also in Outlook and in Bing. That's
Mm.
interesting. Interesting. Explore the MLNet model builder. This is what you were talking about,
Hmm.
the model builder. Interesting. If you had told me like 10 years ago we'd be using animated GIFs to kind of explore this, I would not have believed you. So this
instead
is
of
interesting. So go ahead.
instead of dancing bananas.
Mm-hmm. Right, instead of dancing bananas or like, office memes or whatever. So that's interesting. So this actually builds out the model, and
Hmm.
if you missed it, you blink, you miss it. So it actually looks like it created this building of the model here. Went through and when you do when you get to the code, I guess it produces a zip file, and then there's code
Hmm.
in there and how to load it and use it. That's interesting.
Yep.
I always like ways that it will, look right here, right about there. IT transformer, ML model, machine model load. Interesting. That is fascinating. So I like all these ways that you can make machine learning more accessible
Yeah.
and interesting. And model builder is free. That's good to know. Interesting. This might be a
Yes.
little bit of a squirrel moment, but I've played around a little bit with Blazor, and it's very cool.
Hmm. Yeah.
So you said that there's something called and because I'm talking Microsoft Tech, I'll use Bing. Um, it's an ML conf or
Yep.
.NET conf.
Or .NET Conf.
Conf is not it. This one?
Uh, I think so.
Oh, there you go. .NET conf. No,
Uh, it's in November.
this. There you go.
Yeah,
There you go.
there it is.
Focus on F sharp. .NET conf. So for those of you who don't know, .NET conf is kind of this ongoing virtual summit kind of brand where they focus on one aspect. There was a Blazor one a couple months ago, and so there's Don. So this guy is going to teach Guido of Python fame how to code in F sharp. It seems
Yep.
interesting. Interesting. This looks really cool, actually. Thanks for pointing this out.
Yeah, there's a lot of good sessions there.
That is cool. I wonder what Guido will think of F sharp.
I know it would be interesting.
Don teaches Guido F sharp. So that's tomorrow, 12 p.m. Pacific. Interesting. Learn to stop FUD and stay safe. That's funny. Interesting. This is really cool, actually. I hope it'll be recorded because I won't be able to watch it all. But
I assume it would be.
yeah, I don't see why not. You don't see a lot of. I know that they're kind of splitting out the brand here in terms of what is where and things like that. But interesting. Learn TV. Private conversation. Maybe it's like here too. I don't know. Was it learn.microsoft.com?
/learn, yeah.
Yeah, docs/learn. I wonder is there a learn. Not quite. This is another product, but interesting. No, I love doing the Learn Paths are actually pretty good. Like the Quantum one was really good. You get these snippets of stuff and
yeah,
you go through it, and they were kind of short. You can kind of tackle them in a few minutes and then kind of go back to it. It was pretty useful. But I'm definitely looking forward to checking this out. Do you have to RSVP or is it just going to be streamed here? Save the date.
I think it should just be streamed.
Permissions required. That worries me. I'm just kidding. Just gonna click use because of my own tenant that I have, which I've talked about. I actually set up my family on kind of like our own office tenant and things like that, and which is where I'm running my Power Apps, which is actually pretty cool. Awesome. Anything else?
I think that pretty much does it.
Cool. No, I'm excited about this. That's good. That's fun to watch. I saw a couple of speakers there. One is Maria Nagaga, who used to work. I used to work with at Microsoft, and then Paige Bailey, who I've tried to get on the podcast before. So she left Microsoft to go to Google, and now she's back at Microsoft. So it seems like it's got a pretty interesting lineup of speakers. That's really cool. No, not that one. There we go. This one. So that's tomorrow. That's really cool. I love it. I'm going to definitely watch that because F Sharp is something that I think if you get your head around it, it seems like it can be very powerful. And just, watching Don Syme teach Guido F Sharp, that'll be worth the price of admission right there.
Yeah.
Awesome. So where can folks find out more about you? What's your URL?
JonWood.co.co. That's the blog right there.
Cool. I'll put that up on the screen. Awesome.
Yep.
Cool. And folks can buy you a coffee.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man.
Good stuff. Probably buy a beer with it, but
probably buy a beer. I don't know. After my last presentation, I remember hearing about Haskell. My brain kind of popped. I was like, yeah, I could have used a beer. Well, awesome. Thanks, Jon, for joining. And thank you, Jon, as always, for commenting on this on the live streams. You always bring a lot to the conversation. And here's his YouTube channel if you haven't checked it out. And while we're here, you can get your one free audiobook. I know you're an Audible subscriber because of Data Driven, if I'm not mistaken. Cool. Yeah. Any recommendations?
The two from Cal Newport, How to Be So Good They Can't Ignore You, and Deep Work are probably a couple of my absolute favorites. Let's see.
Awesome.
For an AI type book, Hello World from Hannah Fry is a good one.
That is an awesome book. That is good. I'll have to check out the Cal Newport stuff. I really enjoyed the Hannah Fry. You probably know the name. If you're in the UK, you probably know her because she's on a lot of TV there. At least that's what she says on YouTube. But if you watch as a number file, computer file, she's on does a lot of kind of science shows on YouTube, and I suspect her also broadcast. She was on BBC Click, I think, which is where I first saw her. Back when Virgin America was an airline, which is an awesome airline. And somehow I stumbled across Click, which was, they always have some good stuff on that. But no, that is a good book. I really enjoyed that. She kind of gets into the ethics of things and kind of see how does that work and things like that. But yeah, those are good. If you don't, let me see if I get my hand in the right place. You can get your one free audiobook. You can go to thedatadrivenbook.com, and Audible is a sponsor of Data Driven. And yeah, you get a free one. And if you're like John, we got a little bit of enough to buy a coffee, maybe a beer, not in DC, but somewhere you can buy a beer with that. And you know, it's a good thing, because I'm as I said in yesterday's stream, I'm at 400 and some odd books. I may have a problem, honestly. But currently I'm listening to The Operator, which is written by Robert O'Neill, who was the SEAL that shot Osama bin Laden, and kind of in the middle of the book now. It's interesting, kind of, he talks about SEAL training and stuff like that, and it's an interesting book. It's definitely you get a newfound appreciation for what servicemen and servicewomen go through, and particularly the SEAL training and stuff. They're really tough as nails. Like, the stuff that they have to go through in training is just mind-bogglingly, like, wow, that's almost superhuman. Next on my list is I've been thinking about getting Deep Work, because I know that's been a very influential book. But yeah, so cool. Awesome. So thanks everyone for joining, and definitely go check out Jonathan's YouTube channel, where he gets into MLNet and cool stuff like that. I'm going to roll the outro graphics, and you have a fantastic day.